Hey, good morning, guys. JRY is checking in on the journey of weight loss. It's about 5 a.m. I've got 5 miles. I'm hoping to get 6. Got a few topics I wanted to talk about today. First one is another sober DUI arrest. The second one is a false arrest in Florida. And the last one is the Bricks and Minifigs saga. I'm going to touch on that a little more. Just give my opinion, more or less. Today's video is brought to you by My 2 Feet. My 2 Feet has been around for years. It's gotten me everywhere I need to go. I'm very pleased with the service they have provided me. And, it's a joke. So I don't have a sponsor. Clearly, I only have like 20 subscribers. But hey, I'm proud of those 20. I will tell you that much. Thank you guys for subscribing and stay with me on this journey. I really sincerely appreciate it. So the first topic, it occurred in Grayson, Kentucky, and it involved a gentleman by the name of Nate and a teenage driver. What happened was Nate was leaving his community, and the teenage driver backed out of his driveway and hit him. And he was at fault. So Nate was the victim in this situation. And they got out and exchanged information. And the mom that lived, it's a messy situation. The teenager did not live at the house. It was a friend's house. And it was his friend's mom advising him on what to do. She said, you need to call the police and get a report. And Nate was aware of that. And he said, well, okay, it's very minimal damage, just a scratch on both of their vehicles. As a matter of fact, the teenager said, hey, there was a dent already there. I'm not worried about damages. Just want to get this guy taken care of, essentially. So Nate said, hey, I'm going to run and get a drink while you guys contact the police. Well, the mom called the police, and she kind of misled the dispatcher a little bit. She implied that Nate had left the scene without advising them that he was coming back, essentially. And it kind of made it sound like a hit and run. But to give the mother and the teenager credit, they did clarify on the 911 call that he said he would return. And matter of fact, he returned while they were still on the phone. So the dispatcher gave that information to the cop, and that was problem number one. So the cop immediately said, he left the scene. Even though most states don't require you to stay at the scene of an accident if there's no major injuries or major damage, like the vehicle's inoperable or something. It's not required. And matter of fact, the state I live in, sometimes the police won't come out to do a report if there are no injuries or major damage. You're on your own. So anyways, so Nate left and came back. As soon as the cop arrived, he got out, shook his hand, and introduced himself and said, hey, how you doing, brother? And apparently that was problem number 2. Cop didn't say anything at the moment, and that cop's name is Michael Bell, and his supervisor, Jason Hall, showed up afterwards. So Nate is trying to explain what had happened, and you could tell he had very limited interaction with police, and he's just trying to explain to them. And the cop got frustrated, walked over to the teenager, and said, I can't make heads or tail of what he's saying, da 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 da. Well, the kid was just as bad at explaining what had happened. So they finally got it all together, and he walks over to Nate and says, hey, have you taken anything or drank any alcohol today? And they said, no, I'm a health nut. Yada, yada, yada. The cop said, can I see your ID? He asked why. He said, oh, it's for the report. Well, then he goes, are you willing to do some tests for me today? Problem number 3. What probable cause do you have to make him do sobriety tests when you don't smell alcohol in him or anything of that nature? Well, guess what the police officer said? I smell alcohol. It's like, okay, you can say that all day long, but it doesn't make it true. So Nate got up and blew his breath towards the cop, not in his face, but just towards him. And the cop pushes him back and says, "If you do that again, I'm going to arrest you for menacing." And wow, okay, you said prove to me that you're not under the influence, smell my breath. That's one way, So Nate proceeds to do all the tests. He did the eye test, he did the one-legged stand, and he did the walk and turn. And he passed all of them. You could see it clear as day on the video. You could tell he was sober as they come. So he goes and does a breathalyzer test, 000 all the way across. So, and I failed to mention this, Nate was reluctant to do the test originally. And the cop had said to him, "If you don't do these tests, I have no way to complete my investigation and you will be placed under arrest for DUI." And, Nate did it, and the cop was basically saying at the end, "See, were those so bad? And if you hadn't done those, I would have arrested you." And Nate replied back, "Well, if you had, you'd gotten sued." And oh my God, it immediately butthurt Mr. Bell. You're not Officer Bell, Mr. Bell. That's what you are. You're not a cop. Sorry, this one eats me up. So Mr. Bell goes back with his supervisor, covers up takes off his body-worn camera and covers up the mic so you can't hear what's being said. And they come back and they arrest Nate. They take him down. They impound his vehicle. He was held in jail overnight, even though he passed all the tests and the breathalyzer. Long story short, if he went to the hospital and refused to do a blood test because he was irate at this point, Oh, and the other thing was Nate asked to contact his attorney, and the cop told him, "You can't do that. If he comes down here, he'll be a witness." You can't tell somebody they're not allowed to contact their attorney. You can't. Especially when they're not arrested at that point. He was only detained at that point. He's allowed to have legal advice at that point. That's like that mobile app everyone has. I forget the name of it. But it's like 1-800-lawyer. I don't remember the name. So he refused to do the blood test, which automatically revokes your driver's license. And that's it's an implied consent. And you do that every time you sign for your driver's license. So he went to court to fight the revocation of his driver's license for the refusal of the blood test. And the cop got up there, and he had written in his report that Nate had failed all three of the eye test, the walk and turn, and the one-legged stand. Well, you can see in the body cam footage that he didn't. And Nate's lawyer said, "Hey, well, what probable cause did you have?" And the cop said, "Oh, he was acting erratic and he was uncooperative." Well, you can see in the video that Nate never acted erratic. He was calm, he was polite, he was sitting down on his tailgate for most of the interaction, except when he had to do the test and everything. And he did all of the tests, so that's not being uncooperative. So that got tossed out. DUI got tossed out, but they still gave him the couple of citations for leaving the scene and all that kind of stuff, which was just blown way out of proportion, if you ask me. So at the end of the day, Michael Bell no longer works for Grayson, Kentucky Police Department. He transferred to another division, but that police officer, make this video go viral, please, because he needs to be investigated. That was retaliation, and it was just clear retaliation. He had it in his mind from the moment he got that call. This guy fled, because what the dispatcher passed along to him. He had it in his mind that Nate was was an impaired driver. And that, you know, you're hearing more and more about these cases every day because the police are not, they're not investigating, you know, what they have. They're going off their gut. And you just can't do that. And, you know, it's retaliatory too, because Nate threatened to sue him if he had gotten arrested because he was clearly sober. And if you want a really good breakdown of this video, go check out the civil rights lawyer. He did a two-parter for it, and I mean, it was fantastic. And that's why I'm bringing this up, because the, you know, false DUI arrests are getting worse and worse and worse. And I think, you know, there needs to be changes in how these things are conducted. You know, that's just my thoughts. So the second one is out of Volusia County, Florida, or Flagler County, Florida. This girl named Lindsay Isaac owned a Dodge Durango, I think, and she had a knock on her door one night from the police saying, "Your vehicle was involved in an accident. We're impounding your car." And she's like, what accident? I mean, this is brand new Dodge Durango. This thing was pristine. And she was just kind of baffled by the whole situation. So come to find out, there had been a car accident the night prior with a Dodge Durango that had unfortunately taken the lives of 3 people, one guy on a motorcycle and a couple. And it's just an awful situation. And the person driving the Dodge Durango had fled. So there were some witnesses that had seen what had happened, and they have reported a dark Dodge Durango had been involved. And the investigators went back and checked the flock cameras. So Lindsay had driven on that road earlier that night, and they saw her tag and all that. Well, come to find out, another 911 caller had called in and said it was a maroon Durango and had given a partial license plate that did not match Lindsay's vehicle. So they impounded her car for 6 months while they did the investigation. And you would think that investigation would consist of them going to body shops and asking, "Hey, has this person been in here? Is there any proof of this or that?" Well, apparently none of that happened. And Lindsay wanted her vehicle back, so she hired an attorney to, you know, press the cops to give her vehicle back. And as soon as they did that, the cops put out an arrest warrant for her. So she had to go turn herself in, and she spent 13 days in jail, part of which was solitary confinement, because she was having issues with some of the inmates and also some of the guards. So come to find out, her attorney had requested the information, you know, the reports on the investigation. And when he saw that, he saw that there had been no formal investigation that was done properly. He launched a complaint to the prosecutor. Well, the prosecutor finally got around to reviewing it, and he went, "Oh, goodness gracious, yeah, the Highway Patrol didn't do their job on this one." So they brought in a third party to continue the investigation. Well, they found another lady that was driving a Dodge Durango, maroon. The partial license plate matched, and they went and finally talked to some mechanic shops, and she had a ton of work done on her vehicle. Had both doors replaced, all kinds of body work, tires replaced, whole 9 yards. So the day they arrested this other lady is the day they released Lindsay from jail. But she spent 13 grueling days locked up for a crime she didn't commit. And it's all because a police officer chose to go off of the flock camera that showed her driving on the same street that same night. But just because you're on a street doesn't mean you're guilty of anything. And this is what I was talking about in my previous video. They go off these flock cameras, they get a partial picture of it, you know, but they don't investigate what had happened. And this poor girl's life has basically been flipped upside down. She's 23, I think, and she even tried, before she was officially arrested, news had gotten out that they were investigating her, and she went to try to go to a regular doctor, and her doctor refused to see her and said, "Oh, I can't see you because you're involved in this, vehicular manslaughter or something like that," and turned her away, which is just awful. And it's all because someone didn't do their job. They weren't trained properly. They weren't held accountable. And this is what we're seeing with the police department. They're not held accountable. And there's got to be change. I've said this before, I am not anti-police, but I am pro-accountability. And currently, I mean, they're just, it's like they have free range to do whatever they please. And I did hear that the police department there is taking this one very seriously, but they kind of have to, because this was, headline news for months. And it's awful. I feel so bad for that young lady, and I feel so bad for Nate. Their lives are just turned upside down because the cop didn't like the way he spoke to him. He didn't cuss at him. All he did was say, "Well, I'd sue you if you arrested me for, false arrest, false DUI arrest." Got his feelings hurt, arrested him then. And then this poor Lindsay, the cop wasn't doing his job. He just, there was a 911 call that said, "Here's the vehicle that was involved. This color, partial license plate." And he missed that. I can't understand it. How could you miss something so obvious? How could you, why wasn't he going to body shops and saying, "How many Durangos have you had in here?" I know there's thousands of body shops, but that's what you're paid to do. So do it. So the last thing I want to talk about is the Lego saga again. I've been keeping up with it as much as I can, and I saw Reckless Ben did an interview. And I like I said before, he did most of this for content, and he did admit it in the interview that he got a lot of great content out of this, but he is fighting for the underdog, so to speak. But they pulled the GoFundMe down temporarily because it had something about bricks and minifigs in it, and he is using it to fight his court cases too. So I don't like that, but I understand. He's raising money for the charges, and but I just wish that someone would reach out to Ben, some lawyer, and say, "Hey, look, take this path to get him back, and let's call it a day, because you're digging yourself a hole that you may not be able to get out of." And I hate to say that, because he does have justification to continue fighting, but get the man his Legos back and just call it a day. Come on, Ben. What happens in 5 years when your channel is, maybe it'll be bigger, maybe it'll be lower, I don't know. But what happens in 5 years, and let's say it's down and you're not doing well and you have to get a regular job and you've got all this history, Google might want to hire you, but I don't think you'd be able to get a 9-to-5 job. Just think about it, buddy. Think about your future. That's all I'm saying. Like I said, I appreciate what you're doing, but I think you're taking it a little too far. Just be careful, man. All right, guys. What are your thoughts? Like, share, and subscribe. Keep me going on this journey. If you enjoy hearing me rant, let me know. If you hate hearing me rant, let me know. All right, guys. Have a good day.